Erica, why are you jumping? That's not part of this video.
I love you.
I love you too.
Hannah and Erica deserve an A+++ and 100 on this video.
More than 100.
More than a...
I'm at 105%.
What are you guys doing in here?
Nothing. Never mind.
Making a video.
In the closet.
Wanna be in it?
You want to be in our video?
Yeah.
Now Patty Choti is trying to make me laugh. He's in the bed in front of mine, the one by the door. That is why the guards can't watch him when, bending his neck backwards, he peeps at me from under his blindfold. He has a muscular body, a great sense of humor, and his name is tattooed on his right arm. Patty Choti is missing a leg. I'm sitting on the top bunk, my legs hanging down. He lets me know that he's been left breathless at the wonderful sight of my ankles that swing 5 feet from the floor. He remains in that uncomfortable position, his neck in a bridge, while gesticulating his delight with his mouth, the only part of his face the blindfold leaves uncovered. This time, I don't laugh. "What's wrong, Skinny?" he asks, worried. He knows I'm peering at him. My seat on the top bunk broadens my field of vision. Suddenly, I confirm a suspicion that has been bothering me for 2 days. I see that Eli is here too. Yesterday, they brought Benja and Maria Elena. "Hey, Skinny, what's the matter?" Patty Choti asks again. "We are all here, all of us. What did these motherfuckers do to catch us all?" The guard walks into the room, and once more, I request the promised soda. Hatred doesn't prevent me from wanting to feel the tickle of bubbles traveling down my throat. "Later," he replies. He closes the window, even though there's still daylight, and leaves. Now he turns on the radio. I listen to music at a volume so loud that it seems to be shaking the foundation of the little school. I realize that the music isn't part of my birthday celebration. No screams have filtered through the noise yet. That only happens between songs. I read Patty Choti's lips. "Take heart," he says. I know he must be remembering his own torture session.
After that terrible Tuesday, Alba had to rearrange her feelings in order to continue living, to accept the idea that she would never again see those she loved the most, her Uncle Jamie, Miguel, and many others. She blamed her grandfather for what had taken place. But then, seeing him hunched in his armchair, calling out to Clara and his son in an interminable murmur, her love for the old man returned, and she ran to embrace him, running her hands through his white hair and comforting him. She felt that everything was made of glass, as fragile as a sigh, and that the machine gun fire and bombs of the unforgettable Tuesday had destroyed most of what she knew, and that all the rest had been smashed to pieces and spattered with blood. As days, weeks, and months went by, what had at first appeared to be spared also began to show signs of destruction. She noticed that friends and relatives were avoiding her. Some crossed the street so as not to say hello to her, or turned away when she drew near. She imagined the word had spread that she was helping the victims of the persecution. And it was true. From the very first days, the most pressing need was to secure asylum for those in danger of death. At first, it almost seemed like fun, because it kept her from thinking of Miguel. But Alba soon realized it was no game. Everywhere there were posters reminding citizens that it was their duty to inform on Marxists, and to turn in the fugitives, or else they would be marked as traitors and brought to justice. Alba miraculously rescued Jamie's car, which had survived the bombing and had been sitting for a week where he had parked it. She painted 2 large sunflowers on the doors with the brightest yellow she could find, to distinguish it from other cars and make her new job easier. She had to memorize the location of all the embassies, the shifts of the guardsmen who stood watch in front of them, the height of their walls and the width of their doors. Word that someone needed asylum would reach her unexpectedly, often through a stranger who approached her on the street and who she imagined had been sent by Miguel. She would drive to the appointed place in broad daylight, and when she saw someone motioning to her, recognizing the yellow flowers on her car, she stopped for a minute to let the man jump in. They never spoke on the way, because she preferred not to know his name. There were times when she had to spend the whole day with him, or even hide him for a night or two, before finding the right moment to slip him into one of the more accessible embassies, climbing a wall behind the guards' backs. The system turned out to be more reliable than working out complicated arrangements with the nervous ambassadors of foreign democracies. She would never hear another word about the person she had helped, but she retained forever their trembling gratitude, and once it was over, she breathed a sigh of relief that at least this time someone had been saved. Occasionally, she had to do the same thing with women who feared being separated from their children, and no matter how much Alba promised them that she would bring their children to them afterward through the front door, Knowing as she did that not even the most timid ambassador would turn her down, the mothers refused to leave their children behind, and even the children had to be thrown over the walls or slip through the iron gates. Soon all the embassies were ringed with barbed wire and machine guns, and it was impossible to continue taking them by storm. But then there were other needs to keep her busy.
Night is coming. Somebody stepped into the room to turn on the lights. We were told that we could take a shower today, but it looks like we're out of luck. It makes me so angry. I shouldn't believe the guard's promises. The radio is on, not very loud this time, playing Roberto Carlos's song again. When the newscast starts, they turn the radio off. One morning, while on the bus, I heard the radio. Fellow citizens, if you notice family groups traveling at odd hours of the day or night, report them to the military authorities. The number to call is... I was one of the few passengers on that early bus. It was 6:30 a.m., and I was traveling to a suburban neighborhood with my baby and 2 bags. For a short while, I thought the driver was going to stop the vehicle and run to the nearest phone to alert the army. He just glared at my reflection in the rearview mirror. The night before, some friends of mine had been kidnapped. Since I knew where I lived, I thought of moving out for a few days, just to be safe. But I can't remember my daughter's face on that bus. I know she was wearing the pink jacket that had the bag with stripes. The same one my mom used to take to the beach. I have perfect recall of every item in the bag. But I try so hard, and I still can't remember my daughter's face. I could describe her toys, her clothes, if only I had her picture. But again, maybe it's better this way. If I could look at a picture of her face, I would surely cry. And if I cry, I crumble.
Later, they would come by the old house in Ojo de Agua and insist on seeing me. Sometimes, for a rest, I'd go spend a couple of weeks with Mama in Conuco. I would use the excuse that the monument was being built, and the noise and dust and activity bothered me. But it was really that I could not bear to receive them nor turn them away. They would come with their stories of that afternoon, the little soldier with the bad teeth cracking his knuckles who had ridden in the car with them over the mountain, the bowing attendant from El Gallo who had sold them some purses and tried to warn them not to go, the big-shouldered truck driver with the husky voice who had witnessed the ambush on the road. They all wanted to give me something of the girl's last moments. Each visitor would break my heart all over again, but I would sit on this very rocker and listen for as long as they had something to say. It was the least I could do, being the one saved. And as they spoke, I was composing in my head how that last afternoon went. It seems they left town after 4:30, since the truck that preceded them up the mountain clocked out of the local public works building at 4:35. They had stopped at a little establishment by the side of the road. They were worrying about something, the proprietor said. They didn't know what. The tall one kept pacing back and forth to the phone and talking a lot. The proprietor had had too much to drink when he told me this. He sat in that chair, his wife dabbing at her eyes each time her husband said something. He told me what each of them had ordered. He said I might want to know this. He said at the last minute the cute one with the braids had decided on 10 cents worth of chiclets. Cinnamon, yellow, green. He dug around in the jar, but he couldn't find any cinnamon ones. He will never forgive himself that he couldn't find any cinnamon ones. His wife wept for the little things that could have made the girls' last minutes happier. Their sentimentality was excessive, but I listened and thanked them for coming. It seems that at first the jeep followed the truck up the mountain. Then, as the truck slowed for the grade, the jeep passed and sped away, around some curves, out of sight. Then it seems that the truck came upon the ambush. A blue and white Austin had blocked part of the road. The jeep had been forced to a stop. The women were being led away peaceably, so the truck driver said. Peaceably, to the car. He had to brake so as not to run into them, and that's when one of the women, I think it must have been Patria, the short, plump one, broke away from the captors and ran towards the truck. She clung to the door, yelling, "Tell the Mirabal family in Salcedo that the Calles are going to kill us." Right behind her came one of the men, who tore her hand off the door and dragged her away to the car. It seemed that the minute the truck driver heard the word Calle, he shut the door he had started opening. Following the commanding wave of one of the men, he inched his way past. I felt like asking him, "Why didn't you stop and help them?" But of course I didn't. Still, he saw the question in my eyes and bowed his head. Over a year after Trujillo was gone, it all came out at the trial of the murderers. But even then, there were several versions. each one of the 5 murderers saying that the others had done most of the murdering, while one of them saying they hadn't done any murdering at all, just taken the girls to the mansion in La Cumbre where El Jefe had finished them off. The trial was on TV all day long for almost a month. 3 of the murderers did finally admit to killing one each of the Mirabal sisters. Another one killed Rufino, the driver said. The 5th stood on the side of the road to warn the others if someone was coming. At first, they all tried to say they were that one, the one with the cleanest hands. I didn't want to hear how they did it. I saw the marks on Minerva's throat, fingerprints sure as day on Mate's pal neck. They also clubbed them. I could see that when I went to cut her hair. They killed them good and dead, but I do not believe they violated my sisters. No. I checked as best I could. I think it's safe to say they acted like gentlemen murderers in that way. After they were done, they put the dead girls in the back of the jeep, Rufino in front. Past a hairpin curve near where the three crosses, they pushed the car over the edge. It was 7:30. The way I know was one of my visitors, Mateo Nunez, had just begun listening to the Sacred Rosary on his little radio when he heard the terrible crash. He learned about the trial of the murderers on the same radio. He walked from his remote mountain shack with his shoes in a paper sack so as not to wear them out. It must have taken him days. He got a lift or two here and there, sometimes going the wrong way. He hadn't traveled much off that mountain. I saw him out the window when he stopped and put on his shoes to show up proper at my door. He gave me the exact hour and made the thundering noise of the tumbling jeep he graphed with his arching hand. Then he turned around and headed back to his mountain. He came all that way just to tell me that.
5 days ago, Vaca, a fat, humongous individual, not Gato Vaca, I could never see that one, brought a can of insecticide and sprayed us. After a while, he entered our room again and put a gun in my mouth. "It's loaded," he said. "You're scared, aren't you?" I didn't move. Maybe this is why the whole business of the toothbrushes seemed so absurd. The fact was that a few minutes later, he appeared again and gave us each a toothbrush and toothpaste. "From now on," he solemnly announced, "you'll brush your teeth once a day." I waited with impatience. I wondered how they would conduct that ceremony. It had been more than a week since we touched water. The method of dry cleaning our hands had reached sheer perfection. We discovered that by wetting our hands with saliva and rubbing them, the dirt came out curled in small threads. To brush our teeth without water could be an unprecedented innovation in the universal history of hygiene. I inspected the brush and toothpaste as if they were objects from another planet. That evening, after supper, the guard circulated a jar of water and a can where we could spit after rinsing. By then, I'd been able to read the label on the toothpaste, Argentine Military Labs. The following morning, they just left us the brushes. It was the same morning they washed the floor with the pine-scented deodorant. Afterward, the visitor came. I saw the military boots passing close to my face and the knees of the dark green uniform. That very evening, they changed the method of brushing our teeth. After taking us to the outdoor latrine, they made us stand in the backyard in rows of 4 and spit. Yesterday evening, I fainted out of weakness while I was waiting my turn. Today at noon, they took away the brushes. A while ago, Vaca entered our room and pointed a gun at my temple. I felt the cold of the metal. "It's loaded," he said. "Are you scared?"
Magdalena moaned monotonously on the operating table. "No more, please, no more." The doctor stanched the blood with bits of sterilized cotton. She could smell the iodine, alcohol, disinfectant. The pain pierced her, and she implored again. "Enough, for the love of God, enough!" Suddenly the instrument drove home, and as she screamed, a baffled, babbled appeal came from within. "Mommy." The doctor was drying his hands as he remarked, "That's all, ma'am. Rather squeamish, aren't we? Please don't make fun of me." And then she heard, "Mommy." And then she left. Though she was still in pain, she lengthened her stride and tried to put some spring into her step as she walked alone. Click, 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 click. "Mom, my mom, my—" A ragged, barefoot newsboy looked up at her imploringly. Magdalena bought a paper from him as she searched his face. Mommy. Her child was waiting for her at home. Her boy, the one from her marriage. He came running out like always, little arms out, tripped and fell. "Mommy!" Dejected, depressed, she lay down. Her little boy dozed happily at her side, his little brown-haired head nestled in the pillow. She looked at him, a lovely flower rooted in her heart. Now, in that same heart, she now felt another little one, something that could have bloomed forth in innocence, just like the first one which she had allowed the surgeon to cruelly uproot. Mommy. But the dark head, cut off in its beginning, torn from her, destroyed, sabred in her very womb. The little dark head had left its imprint, a small, indelible trace, unerasable, adorable. And in the mother's soul, the little shade stretched forth his arms and cried, Mommy, Mommy. My poor baby, Magdalena moaned, pressing the fair head of the son who slept on her breast, smiling and content. My poor baby, you're half frozen like a little bird. Come here and warm up. Go to sleep. Poor dear, so cold, so unloved. Little star, my little treasure. Poor baby, sleep, sleep. And the little shadow kept on. Mommy, Mommy. She thought she was going crazy. The heart of the child sleeping next to her went, Mommy. The clock seemed to go, Mommy. She got up, walking back and forth. She remembered the afternoon Ernesto mused about what God must think of his piteous creatures, and what Caroline said, It's all taken care of. She lay down again and dreamt. The sky was jet black in the depths of the night. The tremulous light of the candle came and went up and down in the darkness. Wherever it passed, beads of light came to life like in electric signs, red letters, green letters, and white ones. Mommy, Mommy, Mommy. And then a cold chill and everything went black again. Was it limbo? There was a stirring of shadows and wings. Were they newborns? Then deep sighing and little sobs. Mommy, Mommy. Suddenly, a large figure hurried by, a skeleton in surgeon's costume and rubber gloves. Death, for the surgeon, grasped a package that squirmed and cried, Mommy. Mommy, I do love you so much. Mothers are supposed to sacrifice themselves for their children, but I will sacrifice myself for you. Mommy, dear Mama, I'll never bother you again. You'll never have to listen to me cry, although sometimes you'll wish you could. I'll never tear pages out of your books, never knock over and break a vase. You'll never have to worry about my getting sick or fret over not being able to buy me a toy. I'll never be bad or awkward or make you uncomfortable. I'm the nice boy, the good boy. I won't bother you with my noisy games, and you'll never lose time dressing, washing, or feeding me. Want me to go, Mommy? I'm the obedient one. No cradle, no mother goose. I'll disappear in the cold, in the night, out there somewhere. Want me to go? All right, I'll go. But I do love you so much, dear Mama. Mommy, Mommy, Mommy.
Chimame walks into our room. He tells us to lower our voices so we can't be heard from the corridor. I blow my verses and they flutter to the ground. With tired souls from wearing out roads, from leaving his pieces of skin on the rocks, barefoot of dreams, almost with no fate, with his nails dirty from yesterday's grit, the old pilgrim stopped when he heard death coming, and inking his pen in the wall's water, he managed to write just a few words. Death had an overcrowded carriage that day, yet she folded the verses and took them with her. The old man wailed a long scream of anguish, a cry of suffering, of blood, of pain. "Oh, Death, you have no room in your carriage. Let me have my poems, or take me with them." "I didn't know you wrote poems," whispers Vaska. We hear the engine of the truck, which freezes us for a few minutes. The noise is fading. The guards might be on their way to Army headquarters to pick up lunch. My thoughts move from poetry to lunch, and back. I remember the poem I wrote when the Naposta stream was closed in and channeled underground. I know Vaska would like it. We used to walk along that stream together. Our stream was killed, torn away by its roots. What remains is just a hole, half dirt and half mud. The trees were riddled with shot, and all that was green was murdered. A thin trace of water runs, lonely in the desolate channel. Every forest is mourning the death of her half-brother, who died just because he was too much light and too much song.
I have seen you lavish kisses and receive caresses in hundreds of films, but never before did you receive your fortunate partner into your spirit. You kissed with simplicity, like any good actress, as one would kiss a cardboard cutout. For, and I wish to make this clear once and for all, the only worthwhile sensuality is that which involves the soul, for the soul surrounds our body as the skin of the grape its pulp, as the peel contains the juice within. Before now, your love scenes did not upset me, for you always preserved a shred of dignity, albeit profaned. I was always aware of an intimate rejection, a last-minute withdrawal that redeemed my anguish and consoled my lament. But in rapture in the body, your eyes moist with love, you showed me your true face, the one I never wish to see again. Go on, confess it. You really are in love with the scoundrel, the second-rate, flash-in-the-pan comedian, aren't you? What avails an impotent denial? At least every word of mine, every promise I make was true, and every one of your comments was the expression of a spirit that had surrendered itself. Why did you toy with me the way they all do? Why did you deceive me, like all women deceive, wearing one different mask after another? Why would you not reveal all at once, in the beginning, the detestable face that now torments me? No, I do not want to go see you again, for every time the music dies away and the action fades from the screen, I am overwhelmed. I'm speaking of that fatal barrier represented by the 3 cruel letters that put an end to the modest measure of happiness of my nights of love. At 2 pesos apiece. Bit by bit, I have relinquished the desire to stay and live with you on film, and I no longer die of pain as I am towed away from the cinema by my wife, who has the bad habit of getting up as soon as the last frame has passed. Senorita, I leave you here. I did not even ask you for an autograph, for should you ever send me one, I would be capable of forgetting your unpardonable treason. Please accept this letter as the final act of homage of a devastated soul, and forgive me for including you in my dreams. Yes, more than one night I dreamt about you, and there is nothing that I have to envy those fly-by-night lovers who collect a salary to hold you in their arms and ply you with borrowed eloquence. Your humble servant. P.S. I had neglected to tell you that I am writing from behind bars. This letter would never have reached your hands had I not feared that the world would give you an erroneous account of me. For the newspapers, which always twist things around, are taking advantage of this ridiculous event. Last night, an unknown man, either drunk or mentally deranged, interrupted a showing of Slaves of Desire at its most stirring point when he ripped the screen of the Park Cinema by plunging a knife in the breast of Francois Arnauld. In spite of the darkness, 3 members of the audience saw the maniac rush toward the actress brandishing a knife, and they got out of their seats to get a better look at him so that they could identify him at the time of arraignment. This was easily done as the individual collapsed once the crime had been committed. I know that it's impossible, but I would give anything for you to remember always that sharp stab in your breast.
The man stopped immediately to look at her with wonder. So what are you doing here? She wanted to explain that her life was just like that, but she did not know what she meant by like that, or her life, and she said nothing. The man repeated the question, feeling curious, and at the same time wishing to be discreet. What was she doing there? Nothing, she answered to herself, about to drop from fatigue, but she did not answer him. Instead, she let him think she was crazy. Besides, she never explained herself to anyone. She knew that the man thought she was crazy, and who wouldn't? Wasn't she shamefully feeling what she just referred to as that? She felt this even though she knew how to keep her mental health on a par with her physical health. Her physical health now exhausted, she shuffled through the labyrinth on high-mileage feet, her way of the cross. She was sweating and suffocating, dressed in very heavy wool during the unseasonably severe summer heat. That summer day misfiled in the winter. Her legs hurt. They hurt under the weight of the old cross. By now she had, in a sense, resigned herself to never leaving Maracana and dying there from her weak heart. In a split second, she unconsciously glimpsed that everyone was anonymous, because no one is the other, and the other didn't know the other. Then that person is anonymous, and now she is tangled in that deep and mortal well, in the body's rebellion. Body of invisible depths in which the rats and lizards of her instincts scurried about, veiled in malignant shadows. And was everything out of time, fruit out of season? Why hadn't the other old woman advised her that this could happen, until the end? In old men she had seen many lecherous eyes, but not in old women, out of season, and she was alive, as if she were someone. She who was no one. Mrs. George B. Xavier was no one. So hard.
There. No.
This.
Okay.
No one knew Nemea Sanchez until the moment she came forward, climbing the creaking wooden steps with great caution, and once, on the platform, offered the mayor the velvet pillow which lay in her outstretched hands. Over here. Soon, one of the greatest aspirations of the neighborhood inhabitants, not only of the women, but also some of the men, was to have in their homes one of the pillows embroidered by Nemea Sanchez. One man, who was more daring than the rest, was able to find out where she lived and actually went to her house to place an order for a pillow. When he talked about it, it turned out that he was unable to explain anything about Nemea Sanchez, or who she lived with. Perhaps she didn't live with anyone, because he didn't encounter anyone at all in the dining room or hear sounds emanating from the kitchen, or the bathroom, or from the floor above. This fact would have caused alarm, since the houses of the neighborhood were only allotted to families with children, but as she was the creator of the embroidered pillow, the normal rules did not apply. The first batch of pillows, which came with a surprising velocity from Nemea Sanchez's house, always pertained to giraffes. In order to not repeat herself, the embroiderer placed the giraffe in the most implausible settings. After situating it in a jungle, she placed it on plateaus with a large golden sun, then between multiple suns, later between moons, and when she felt she had quite exhausted the possibilities of the African landscape, she placed it in the middle of rivers and waterfalls, and finally set it down in her own neighborhood. This last pillow visibly disconcerted its owner and the spectators. The giraffe, always in profile, was imprisoned by superimposed houses, which obviously recalled the outlines of the neighborhood buildings. Nemea Sanchez put curtains with violet flowers in the windows, the likes of which didn't exist in the area, but she was not able to disguise it completely. The client felt cheated, since the magic of the pillows consisted in their ability to transport the owner to another reality, to imaginary African landscapes, forests, or plains. With a certain apprehension, the client returned the pillow with the giraffe between the houses. The following day, she returned to explain herself to the embroiderer, but the door remained obstinately closed. Although it was clear that Nemea Sanchez was inside, neither did she open the door to other clients that insisted on knocking, but greeted them instead with unconcealed hostility. The next day, almost at dawn, the people of that block saw the sacristan knocking at Nemea Sanchez's door. He entered, and was there for a short while. It was futile to ask him anything afterward, since he belonged so little to this world. After the incident, the neighbors once again entertained themselves, keeping watch over Nemea Sanchez's house. They noted that for 3 days she did not even show her face in the street, and on the 4th she left carrying, in her unique manner, a large package wrapped in newspaper, which, without a doubt, contained a pillow. The only surprising and unusual thing was that she carried it wrapped. A neighbor woman who was one of her clients stopped to ask her in a humble voice if she would show the pillow to her, but Nemea Sanchez just glared at her and continued directly to the church. She went in and came out of the dark cave where the priest was located in no more than a matter of minutes. It was Sunday. At the usual hour the people met for Mass. The woman, many small children interspersed among them, and a few old people sat near the entrance. A long time passed and the priest did not appear. Noon arrived and the women, a little afraid, looked at each other and shrugged their shoulders. At last 2 got up, crossed the black corridor which led to the sacristy and the priest's quarters, and knocked. They knocked a long time without answer. Finally, the door opened slightly, and the sacristan appeared, wide-eyed and slavering, murmuring incomprehensibly. It wasn't possible to understand him until he shut the door and they heard the lock turn. The people outside withdrew in the midst of frightened comments. Nope, nothing was seen of the priest for 15 days. When he climbed up to the pulpit 2 Sundays later, he looked like he had 1 foot in the grave. A sudden decrepitude had overtaken him, dispelling the vainly apocalyptic air which had held the people in terror of hell. He died shortly thereafter, and although no one understood clearly what had transpired, they all assumed it had to do with Nemea Sanchez's black velvet pillow, which no one had ever got to see.
Nobody knows where he hides. Nobody's seen him at home. But we hear him all the time. Ribbit, ribbit, little frog.
Daughter, dear, my tongue hurts, and I can't say.
Ribbit, ribbit.
Even if I could, you wouldn't hear me. This little poem soothed you when you cried. You went to sleep listening to it. I repeated it for a whole day, but I still can't sleep.
Ribbit, ribbit. He sings on the roof.
I won't see you again. The electric prods on my genitals. Trapped like the little frog.
But we hear him all the time.
I told the torturers if they took me to the meeting place, I would point to him. Then, when I saw him, I didn't do what I promised. Afterward, the electric prod again, and the blows, harder. Where is he? But my child.
Ribbit, ribbit.
Where are you, my little girl? I don't know where he is. The punch to my stomach, and the torture bed again. Stop it. Please. Like a caged animal.
We hear him all the time. Ribbit, ribbit, little frog.
I can't turn around. My kidneys are mangled. Today, I saw blood in my urine.
Nobody's seen him at home. Ribbit, ribbit, little frog.
If only I was a frog. I smell like a caged animal. I think I'm about to lose my mind.
Nobody knows where he hides. Ribbit, ribbit, little frog.
Nobody knows, but I can't sleep. I like it when you say,
Ribbit, ribbit.
my girl, say it again. If I fall asleep, I won't ache for a while, but when they come for me, to kill me next time, if I knew where he was hiding, perhaps they wouldn't hit me anymore. Alone, they won't leave the little frog alone, 'cause nobody knows where he hides.
Ribbit, ribbit, he sings on the roof.
No, please, I don't want them to come. I'm not an animal. Don't make me believe I'm an animal. But that's not my scream. That's an animal's scream. Leave my body in peace. I'm a froggy, so my child can play with me.
Ribbit, ribbit, little girl on the roof. Nobody, nobody.
I'm thirsty. Sir. Sir. Water, please. You know you can't drink water. If you drink water, you'll die, sucker. See, we take care of you, son of a bitch. I guess a whole day has passed. I'm going to recite the poem to you again, my girl. The poem of the little frog. Soon you'll be 2 years old, and you'll learn it all.
We all hear him when it rains. Ribbit, ribbit. Nobody knows where he hides. Nobody's seen him at home. But we hear him all the time. Ribbit, ribbit, little frog.
My girl, my tongue is hurting, and I can't say.
Ribbit, ribbit.
But this poem soothed you when you cried. I've been repeating it for a day, and still I can't fall asleep. I smell like a caged animal.
Nobody knows where he hides.
Nobody knows, but I can't sleep. If I could sleep, I wouldn't suffer for a while. But when they come for me, to kill me next time. No, please don't come. I'm not an animal. Don't make me believe I'm an animal. But that's not my scream. That's an animal's scream. Leave my body in peace. I'm a little frog for my daughter to play with. She'll soon be 2 years old, and she'll learn the whole poem.
We all hear him. Ribbit, ribbit. When it rains. Ribbit, ribbit.
The House of the Spirits by Isabel Allende. In the Time of the Butterflies by Julia Alvarez.
Excerpts from The Little School by Alicia Partnoy. And excerpts from Short Stories by Latin American Women, The Magic and the Real. The title of one of the stories we read was The Child That Never Was. And this story is about abortion.
At the time that the author was alive, abortion was a hot-button issue in Bolivia, where the writer is from. 3 years after she died, the anti-abortion law was passed, and judging by the horrific nature of the abortion experience that the narrator has, we could assume that the author was for the anti-abortion law.
Most likely. Okay. The next one is called Looking for Some Dignity. And this, it seems, is about a woman who can't find herself and is confused and feels like she's a nobody. And she's just very lost in her own self. And she can't even explain to people why she's living or what she's doing here. She's just lost and sad. And it seems like something that we can all
relate to
being
lost.
sad and lost.
Finals were lost.
It's very lost on finals. So that's another one
It's true.
that's very important because we need to find ourselves. We do.
Searching.
And the next one is Park Cinema which Hannah would like to
Dark
explain
cinema.
because she loves this one.
This is creepy. This is a creepy story. It's about a man who falls in love with the image of an actress on screen. And he has the inability to separate her characters from the actual human being, the actual actress that plays these characters. And in an attempt to express his rage, he destroys a cinema screen and writes her this long letter from prison talking about how disappointed he is that she actually fell in love with someone instead of just having a superficial relationship like in most of her films. And he really has trouble severing that tie that this actress could potentially be a human being instead of just the character she is on screen.
I think we know a lot of people like that.
It's true.
It's kind of sad that this happens nowadays as well.
There are a good number of people that are really in love with the Tomb Raider.
Lara Croft. Lara Croft. Lots of people love her. And the last one from this was The Tale of the Velvet Pillows. And
This one was messed up too.
this one is pretty messed up. But this girl, the author of this story, we didn't talk about her in class, but she's an artist. She went to college for art. Yes.
Yeah, I'm learning new things too.
She is, and I'm telling her.
Because this is not a story that I read.
No, I read it, and I thought it was very good. And her main dealio in living was that this was during a time when the United States were really putting their arms out and changing other places, and she didn't like that their art was becoming more popular and was stretching and affecting her own art. So she was an anti-art from the United States movement. I can't remember what it was called. And I feel like this was just a way for her to say, screw art that is not like every other one, because this lady who was in this story definitely did not make art like other people, and her art actually killed a priest, or sacristan.
Priest, essentially.
Priest.
Yeah.
So it's just a way for her to say that art is individual for everybody, and definitely for this woman, and that it has a large effect, and it can't all be unionized into one kind of art. I don't even know another word for art. Another word for art.
And self-expression.
Self-expression. She needed to self-express, and when she couldn't, it got bad. So she's trying to say that it's okay to let other people self-express, and we shouldn't take them and just use them. Yes.
Now, we have In the Time of the Butterflies, and we talked about this a little bit in class. It's about the Mirabelle sisters, who were parts of the rebellion against the Trujillo dictatorship. And the part that I read was actually a reflection by the fourth sister that lived, Dede. And she has had to deal with the death of her sisters, not only just their death, but then their fame after their death. And she has had to deal with museum openings and awards and all kinds of things. And at the end, this is her reflection on what people have come to tell her, the people who saw her sisters on their last day alive, and her dealing with having to relive her sister's death every time somebody new comes to tell her something.
It's kind of like at funerals where somebody says, "I'm sorry," and you just,
Sorry for your loss.
you don't know what to say. I hate when people say that.
Can't say thank you.
We can all relate to these, yeah. Thank
True.
you for saying I'm
Thank
sorry.
you. Thank you for apologizing.
Thank you for my...
Because we all know that you actually killed my uncle.
Yeah, right? So, we can relate to that one.
Indeed.
You want to do your other one?
And then we have The House of the Spirits by Isabel Allende.
Beautiful.
Gorgeous. Now, Isabel Allende is considered an Argentinian writer, and her family was in power. And they were ousted, and this is about the rebellion in Argentina, and about a lot of rebellions in South America. Really, it was anti-Marxist, anti-communist, and there were a lot of dictatorships and military juntas and things like that, and so they were very anti-egalitarian. And at the end, it was about one of the main characters' experiences with trying to help people who were persecuted for their political beliefs escape to other countries.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Scary stuff.
it is.
Things happen. And the last book,
Shit goes
or the
down.
one book we read, Shit Goes Down, was The Little School. And we just read a bunch of sections from this that we found were scariest and things we wouldn't want to go through ourselves, such as guards putting a gun to your head and saying, "Are you scared?" Obviously, she's going to be scared.
I would pee myself.
I would be myself. And we just chose sections. Do you want me to go section by section?
No,
Okay.
no.
We just chose sections like talking about. They turned on the music so you couldn't hear the torturing.
To drown out the screams.
To turn it to drown. So, I mean,
We chose sections from all of these books that we felt were particularly haunting, and these were clearly events that the authors experienced that stuck with them for one reason or another and affected their writing and their expression.
especially this one.
She actually underwent the torture. In Allende's case, she was exiled for a while. With Julia Alvarez, her family immigrated to the United States because of the family's persecution under Trujillo. And a lot of these authors underwent similar things. Persecution for their art, criticisms, exile, moving to other countries, and it deeply influenced them.
Things that influenced their writing, and that's what we wanted to talk about. How their lives influenced what they wrote. And they're all very similar and very sad and
Slightly depressing and scary.
Slightly depressing.
Which is why I read them in a closet.
yes, with lights. So,
I hope you like it.
yes, by Erica Jackson and Hannah Wade.